Hey, what's going on guys? Mark Lansangan here from TechnoBuffalo, and today we have a pretty awesome video for you guys. Today we're going to be comparing the Galaxy S6's camera to the HTC One M9. Now as you know, the Galaxy S6 is rocking a new 16 megapixel camera in the back with an f1.9 aperture with OIS and a 5 megapixel camera ultra wide angle lens in the front. Now the One M9 is rocking a new 20 megapixel camera in the back and moved the 4 ultra pixel camera up in the front for better selfies. So let's go ahead and see which flagship device has the better camera. So for the past few years, HTC has always focused on its sensors and not the megapixels, but we all know the images that the ultra pixel sensors produce were just okay. Now this year, the company jumped back into the megapixel race, putting a 20 megapixel shooter in its new M9 and using the 4 ultra pixel sensors on the front. Now Samsung on the other hand has always opted in for a high megapixel sensors, though its software is typically overprocessed a bit too much for our taste. The Galaxy S6 this year is rocking a new 16 megapixel camera in the back with an improved f1.9 aperture just to let more light into the sensor, and it has OIS, which the One M9 unfortunately does not have. It also has a 5 megapixel camera in the front with an ultra wide angle lens. So let's talk about the camera performance first. So with the Galaxy S6, Samsung's put a lot of focus on improving the camera experience. Now if you double press the home button, it'll launch the camera instantly and it is fast. The One M9 has a similar feature when the display is turned off. Turn the phone in landscape mode and press the volume up button and it'll launch the camera right away. It's not as fast as the S6, but it's not far behind. Despite the Galaxy S6 launching faster, the One M9 actually shot quicker compared to the S6. Now in terms of autofocus, both the One M9 and Galaxy S6 are fairly quick. Both seem to hit focus right away, though the one thing that the Galaxy S6 has that the One M9 does not have is the tracking autofocus feature, which constantly adjusts the focus as your subject moves or when you move the camera. So in my opinion, in terms of camera performance, the Galaxy S6 wins here. So moving on to software, if you've used Samsung phones in the past, you'll be familiar with the camera experience. Not much has really changed here. There are still a bunch of tweaks and little settings you can turn on and off. And there are also various shooting modes as well, like Pro Mode, which lets you take full control of the focus, ISO, white balance, exposure, and more. There are also new filters and effects you can apply in real time, which looks great and works really well. And I also noticed that everything is so much cleaner and snappier this time around. The heavy image processing has been turned down quite a bit too, which is most definitely a plus for me. HTC's UI hasn't really changed all that much either. You'll still be able to change a few settings through the mini window that pops up to change ISO, exposure, and white balance, but everything else is exactly the same as the One M8. From the sounds to the buttons, there's not a whole lot of new features within the camera app. You will find a new bokeh mode that gives your photos that nice depth of field look, but all in all, I was hoping HTC would have added something new to the table just to make the experience much better. So for me, simplicity is key. Both UIs are very simple, but I'm gonna have to give it to the Galaxy S6 on this one. Software is a big part of the camera experience, and the One M9 definitely let me down in this department. There wasn't anything new to play with, unlike Samsung's new camera app. There are new visuals throughout the app, and to me, the One M9's UI just looked very similar to the One M8, and it just didn't have that wow factor. I just wasn't as excited as I was when I used the Galaxy S6. So in terms of video quality, both are able to film in 4K resolution. Unfortunately, the bitrate on both devices aren't very high, which means quality won't be all that great. There's also a limitation on how much you can film on both devices when filming in 4K, a total of 6 minutes on the One M9 and a total of 5 minutes on the Galaxy S6. If you're not planning on shooting 4K and want to film in full HD 1080p, the Galaxy S6 has optical image stabilization, so the videos are going to be much smoother and more manageable compared to the One M9 if shooting in 1080p. There's also slow motion and fast motion videos on both devices with the Galaxy S6. You can control where in the video you want it to slow down, just like on the iPhone 6, though the One M9 on the other hand slows down the entire footage and the quality just becomes really muddy no matter what lighting condition you're in. So in terms of video quality, I'm going to have to give it to the Galaxy S6 on this one. Now last but not least, let's talk about the image quality. Now Samsung said the Galaxy S6's 16 megapixel sensor is the best in any mobile phone, while HTC got back into the megapixel race with its 20 megapixel shooter. Looking at the images we took this past week, the S6 images just look so much cleaner compared to the photos taken on the One M9. The images we got from the One M9 were soft, were noisy, especially for a 2015 flagship device. The S6 photos, on the other hand, were sharp, vibrant, contrasty, and featured a pretty wide dynamic range, though I did notice that the S6 tends to shoot a bit on the warmer tones compared to the One M9's cooler looking tones. HDR mode on the Galaxy S6 is great too, adding a pretty subtle effect on top of the image. The One M9's HDR mode, on the other hand, is just terrible. Images came out flat and the colors just look unnatural. Exposure is also a big factor in mobile photography. Previous Samsung devices I've tried, with the exception of the Note 4, handled exposure pretty badly, and I'm glad to say that the S6 doesn't suffer from this issue. However, the One M9 suffers from this problem big time. Exposure is all over the place to a point where highlights are clipping, which is most certainly not a good thing when taking photos on the go. So even if you tweak the settings on the One M9, the quality is just not up to par with the Galaxy S6 in auto mode. Alas, bigger megapixel count doesn't always get you better image quality. Now, talking about the front-facing cameras on these two, the One M9 has an ultra-pixel front-facing camera, and that essentially lets more light into the sensor, which should help in low-light conditions. The Galaxy S6, on the other hand, has a 5-megapixel sensor with an ultra-wide-angle lens, and to be quite honest, I thought both were great despite the difference in sensors. The One M9 I felt just had a bit of a softer look than the S6's detailed shot, but overall both front-facing cameras are pretty good. If you prefer to have a wider field of view, the Galaxy S6 will give you just that. The One M9 has a wide field of view as well, but just not as wide as the Galaxy S6's camera. Now overall, in terms of image quality, I think the Galaxy S6 wins this round. And so to wrap it all up for you guys, we ultimately think that Samsung is taking mobile photography to a whole different level. Now I know in the past that I've bashed Samsung for its image quality and the heavy image processing, but the new sensor and software in the Galaxy S6 just shows how incredible the photos can be. Samsung's doing a great job improving its sensors and photo processing, and I think HTC needs to step up its camera game if it wants to keep up with the pack. We actually have a gallery up on our site with sample images from both devices, so make sure to check out the links down below that like button. And if you guys haven't subscribed yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys in the next one.